Other than that, I don't know. And I love Bobby Joe. You got the AI companion, so we're trying to help Bobby Joe be a little more efficient in the minutes.
Yeah, that's great.
Here's hoping.
Are we waiting for Lance? Are we good from your side? Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, I'm good. I have my headphones on so I can hear you. I'm brewing a little pot of coffee because I ran out of Keurig mods. So, and I usually brew it, but I usually would make up. I'd use my Keurig machine this time of day and just make 1 cup. But I'm brewing a little 2-cup thing.
Hopefully we can keep
so
you.
I'm going to be running out there in a few minutes to get a cup. So
hopefully we can keep everybody awake.
But I have the headphones on so I can hear.
Okay. All right. So why don't we thank you everyone for being prompt. Why don't we start this meeting? It's 3:01 on May 20th, the VEHI board meeting. I will ask for a motion to adopt the agenda as posted. Or I'm sorry, any proposals to amend the agenda? Okay. So can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Suzanne, thank you. And Lisa, second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Passes unanimously. Next item is public comment. Seeing no members of the public present, we're going to move on to agenda item number 3, approve the meeting minutes from April 17th. Thank you for the page numbers, pages 2 through 4. Any comments, questions on the minutes for Bobby Joe? Okay, seeing none, I'll take a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Thank you, Lisa. Second, Cheryl. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, approved unanimously. All right. VEHI financials for first quarter. Chris, I'm assuming this is you.
That is. Thank you. So you have the financials in your packet and my memo, but I'll go over the summary information. The first statement you'll see is what is your balance sheet or your combined statement of net position. And, you know, I always kind of go right to the bottom of this one. This talks about our cash, our assets, our liabilities, which are mostly claims. And when you look down to the net position area, you'll see that to date we have a loss of just over $3 million as compared to a loss of $2.7 million this year last year at this time. So, you know, we're running a slightly larger loss this year than we were last year, but somewhat consistent. The net position, you'll notice, is down to just under 37 million, and we were at 48.6 million last year. So we are down 24% on net position. Did somebody have a question? Okay. So, you know, well, that's to be expected. We're coming off a couple of significant loss years. So I would expect that our net position would be decreasing as we've been speaking. The next report is the income statement, the combining statement of revenue, expense, and change in net position. So if you look here, you'll see that operating revenue is up 14%. Claims related expenses are up 13% over last year. And then also our general operating expenses are up 5%. So like I mentioned, you know, you have a little bit larger loss this year than last year. Actually, that flips. That's after investments. So if you look at before our investments, our loss is a little bit less. At this time last year, we lost 6.2 million. We're looking at just under a $5 million loss before investment activity. But investments were doing much better last year. We still are positive on our investments in our market this year, but last year it was much more favorable. So that was helping us to bring out that, to bring back a couple of $1 million there difference. Investments, it's hard to say what that's going to do through the end of the year. Obviously, that's going to affect our bottom line and our net position at year end, and where we are as far as our target goes to our surplus. Hopefully things are going to smooth out and stay positive there. So, you know, I think there's no real new news in this financial report that we haven't talked about before. We knew that we were looking at a loss. The actuaries for the health program are saying about a $5.6 million loss now before investments. You know, that could happen. You know, we're at a 4.4 million loss now, but as a reminder, last year we ended up losing about $15 million before investments, and we're at about the same position we are now that we were last year. So it just is really going to have to see how that fourth quarter plays out to see where we land. Any questions on those two statements or financials in general? Okay. Budget to actual is running pretty well.
Chris,
Yes, Mike.
Yeah.
Yes.
So my question is really around the net position.
Yes.
Because you had given us a heads up and a warning a couple meetings ago.
Yeah.
Are we still heading into that territory where we're going to be under the amount in the policy? I forget what the number was. Was it 9%?
Under the 9%. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, we were looking at 7.5 to 7.9 range if we lose $5.6 million. But we might lose even more than that. So it could be worse than that. I don't really see how it would be better than that unless the market does something crazy in a positive way, but I don't see that happening either. So we are definitely in that range. And just as a follow-up to your question, I actually did have another reach out from DFR just a couple of weeks ago, just checking in to see if we had started working on our plan to rebuild surplus. So even though our policy says that we don't owe DFR a written plan until we hit 6%, you know, DFR can certainly ask and monitor us, and they do, and they are. So what I said to them was, I said, we have not formally worked on a written proposal at this point, that we are looking at different components, that there's a lot going on, that we've had lots of discussions about a variety of factors, and that a lot of that would be vetted out as we work through this year's rating process. Because certainly, in my opinion, we're looking at needing to build something into this year's rating to help rebuild surplus. You know, I think DFR is going to actually require it. And looking at a little bit more long-term and through that rating process, see where we are then, see what we're going to do this year, and see what we're thinking in the next subsequent years.
And so when do we need to act? During the rating, which is what, October, when we set the rates?
Yes. And then, so our report would be due, I think it's okay. So our audit financials are due to DFR on 10/1. And I think the policy says it's either 30 or 60 days after that. Okay. So pretty quickly after, you know, so by, you know, 10:30, 11:30, somewhere in there, we're going to need to have something worked out. But I certainly see it sort of coming out of that rating process, because we're going to have those discussions at that point of what are we doing this year, and then what are we going to do to continue to build it back.
And okay, we'll have a pretty good idea of the year-end or the fiscal year-end financials by around the beginning of August, at least Is that right?
So I don't get the final reserve numbers from Blue Cross Blue Shield until the end of July. Normally they give it to me the 15th of the month following month end close, but they like a little more time since it is the year end numbers. So I probably won't have the final numbers to book until like very last day of July. So first, second week of August, you know, I'll be waiting. At that point, I'll be ready with everything else, and I'll just be waiting for that last number. But that last number is a big number, and makes a huge difference. So you can't guess at that one. So
Yeah, so I think we'll definitely be having this conversation, if not in August, definitely in September, you know, prior to the rate filing.
Okay,
And
any
then-
other questions before Chris moves on?
Okay. So the only other thing I was going to say, the last statement in your packet is your budget to actual, and overall things are trending okay there. As far as operating expenses are, you know, general sort of administrative expenses, those are all in line with budget. You know, claims are up a percentage or so, and revenues down 1% off budget. And that's enough to make a loss. I mean, that's 1% on these numbers is pretty significant. And I assume that part of the reason we're low on contributions is the private schools leaving. You know, that may not be all of it. It's an estimated number, but certainly at the time the revenue number was set, we weren't expecting the private schools to go. Now, true, they would bring down claims as well, but other people's claims are more than offsetting that, obviously. So, you know, from a budget standpoint, everything else though that we can control is in line. So,
Questions, comments? How many lives did we lose when the private schools? How many private schools left, and how many lives approximately are we talking about?
It was 5 schools, and I think it was 750 maybe lives. It was 700 something. Not a huge number, but not a small one either.
No, but like 2%, right? Or 30, if I could do math.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments, questions on the financials? Okay, we'll chat offline about prepping for the net position conversation later this year.
Mhm.
Our next scheduled board meeting is August. Is that correct? Okay. Oh, Bobby Joe says,
Yeah, hang on, I'm gonna look. Because I know we have a big break, so. I was actually just thinking that if we don't have one. not
No,
as
we
soon
have one in June.
We have one in June, yes. But
Okay.
we won't be ready for that at that point, but
all right, so maybe we'll start. I'll talk to Lance and the leadership team. Maybe we'll.
Yeah, we may not
Start-
meet till September.
yeah, and even
I
September.
think
I'm
it
not
might be
sure.
September, Bobby Joe. I remember looking at it at the last meeting.
Yeah, it might even
I
be
don't know where it
October,
is
so we
now.
might
I
need
don't
to
know where
put one
that-
in there for September.
I see one for October. But I don't see one for September.
January, March, May.
Yeah. June, October, and
On the
December.
work plan, there's one, the third Tuesday in June.
Yeah, there is one in June for sure, but
Yeah.
then it skips to October for the rate filing. But I think based on where we're at with financials and any benefits, you know, I don't know, if any changes we might want to make, we might need a meeting in September to, you know, even if it's just a short hour and a half, just to talk through our options.
I think so.
Doodle poll it is.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Chris. All right, let's move and talk about the auditor engagements.
yes. So in your packet, you have the engagement letter from Johnson and Lambert. Johnson and Lambert has conducted our audit for the last couple of years. This will be their 3rd year after Sullivan and Powers had done it for many, many, many years prior to that. as a reminder, we switched because Sullivan and Powers reorganized their business, so no longer had the capacity to do our audits. And we landed in a good place with Johnson and Lambert. They are an industry leader in, they basically focus on insurance and pools and captives. They have a presence in Vermont. There are very few firms that really work in this area. There's only, 2 governmental risk pools in Vermont. Well, 3, VISBIT, VEHI, and the League. So, you need some expertise because our financial statements are presented differently because of our structure. So we feel good about Johnson Lambert. We feel that we get a very good audit out of them. They're very thorough, very knowledgeable. So we're bringing that to you for approval today. The cost has gone up due to inflationary factors and staffing. They had expressed to me last year that they were having a really hard time finding accountants. And so our fee schedule does reflect an 11% increase. So we're looking at the audit being $37,777.50. And if you glanced it and you saw the 36.5, there's an embedded thing right beneath it that says we also add 3.5% for other sorts of infrastructure type things. So you have to add that together.
I noticed that.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, you get to the same place. I don't know why they choose to do that, but that's what they choose to do.
Because then they don't have to put the number of 37.7 in it, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Ooh, sorry. Mike, I wanted to let you know that I just sent you over some kind of advanced motions that we had put in place for you. You had asked for that for some things, so we prepped some in advance. So I just want to let you know those are out. Those are sent to you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. All right. So questions, comments on the auditor engagement. Mr. Mark.
Yeah, just a question, Chris. How does the cost of this firm compare to our previous vendor?
So Sullivan Powers was a little bit cheaper. It wasn't. It's been 3 years, so.
Okay.
But I think, if I remember correctly, it might have been like a 30%, maybe 40% jump when we moved firms, which I always expected. Yeah, they are pricier. They do approach it slightly differently. They actually do some auditing at Delta Dental and at Blue Cross. It's limited, but they do some sampling over there, whereas Sullivan and Powers always relied on the SOC 1 report, so the internal controls audit that was performed on those entities, and didn't go and do their own testing. So that may be a small piece of it, but it's a bigger firm.
Okay.
We were Sullivan and Powers' oldest client. I mean, they treated us well. Like I said, Johnson and Lambert, they're a national firm. So yeah, certainly the price went up. But I think it's reasonable and fair for what you're looking at in the market today. I don't think you're going to find an audit that's going to be significantly cheaper. And if you do, you've got to find somebody who fits, like who
Right.
even wants our business because of what they do. And then maybe you could find somebody who is cheaper, but you're not going to get a very good audit out of it. So sometimes you have to weigh all of those factors.
Thank you.
I would say that the cost of the VEHI audit is similar to the cost for our school district audit, which includes the single audit, which is all the federal funds and all that. So that's kind of in the same range of what I think.
That's helpful.
Different kind of audit, but it's
right.
Probably within the range of, the time and effort, I'm sure, is similar.
Thanks, Cheryl. Any other comments or questions? All right, so I would like a motion to authorize the board chair to sign the auditor engagement letter from Johnson Lambert for the FY25 audits.
So moved.
Thank you, Cheryl. Second. Thank you, Lisa. Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Chris. All right. Next up is the VEHI retiree filing for Vistor's members.
Mark, do you want to start that one or do you want me to? Happy to do either way.
Please go ahead. It's fine.
So I'm not sure if folks had a chance to look through it yet, but we did receive it's considered the VEHI retiree filing, and it's generally for Vistors. And we had started to see, and it had been flagged about 10 or 11 months ago, that we were having seeing a significant increase in their claims as well. Now, to keep in mind, this is primarily the group of folks that retire before they're Medicare eligible. So a lot of these folks are probably between 55 and 64 years old, and they still have the original health plans that we no longer offer. So these are the old indemnity style plans or point of service plans. So with that said, when we received the renewal, it came in at a 26% increase for this group. And these rates are on the high side because I think because of their not only because of their members and the age of their members and experience of their members, but also the level of the plans as well. So I think it was a higher than most of us imagined they would be. We thought we were probably looking at 15 to 20, so 26 was pretty high. If you see what page I'm on, page 19 kind of gives a breakdown, 19 out of the 77, gives a breakdown of where these increments are. None of them, and the updated experience added 19.2% to the rates. So there was really a significant jump to their experience this past year. The costs have gone up, yes, and have been up for the last couple of years, but they saw a sharp increase in utilization this past year. So we are working with them. We expect to file the rates as proposed, as there's not a lot we can do with that. The Vistors group is going to chat with their board, and we are looking at potentially adding an additional plan if it makes sense. And that would be one of our current plans. So if we wanted to offer also the platinum plan to them or the gold plan to them, not the CDHP plans, because that gets too complex with the HRAs, but we're at least going to price it out for them for consideration. It may or may not be something they decide to continue to offer. It would not replace any of their plans. It would just be in addition to. Anything else, Mark, on that?
Just a reminder, we're talking about a relatively small number of people. What is it again, Bobby Joe, the non-Medicare, about 1,000?
It's like a little less. I think it's about 850. Yeah. There is another group that's in there as well in this filing. That is this little subset of people. That's about another 900 to 1,000 people who are Medicare eligible. And this is the Medicare supplement plan for people who had purchased an individual Part D plan elsewhere. So they were not allowed to be moved to the VBA group. And they came to us, you might remember, for those who were on the board at that time, they kind of came to us last minute and said, oh my gosh, they're not taking these people unless they drop their Part D plans. And we didn't want to put people in that position. So that particular group is looking at a 14.5% increase on their plan. But these rates are, considerably lower. For example, this plan has been about $194 going up to $222. because it is only a Medicare supplement plan. There's no drug coverage, and Medicare pays first for this group. Comparatively to the average plan for the other group is almost $2,000, and it's going from $1,900 up to $2,400 per month. So on average of per member per month. So.
And just a reminder, unlike the active rating, the retiree rating doesn't implicate our reserves at all.
Correct. So at this point, we've provided a proposed motion for you, unless anyone has other questions that they want to chat about.
When you say update experience, that's at 19%. What does that mean?
So as you might remember, we rate for these plans and make assumptions years in advance of when it actually happens. So, 2 years ago, we were making assumptions about what would happen in this time frame, and then now that we're in this time frame, we found, oh wow, this is exceedingly higher than what we thought it was going to be. So they have to update the experience of what actually happened versus what we thought would happen 2 years ago. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it's based on the usage and the claims.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
They usually have a pretty good idea of what although some of that is some assumptions as well, because they're making assumptions about what the hospital budgets will be, again, 2 years in advance. So there's some change on that as well. But I think in this case, it's primarily utilization for this metric.
Any other questions or comments?
Totally irrelevant, but I'm getting off of that this year, July, join Medicare. So anyway,
Yay
kinda
for
nice.
you.
Yes.
Yeah. VBA is a much more fiscally manageable
Friendly.
option.
Exactly.
It's a lot easier on the wallet for sure.
All right, seeing no further questions or comments. I'll take a motion to accept the Vista's rate filing for calendar year 26 as presented, and to authorize Blue Cross Blue Shield to file the proposed rates on behalf of VEHI, with the understanding that there may be amendment to the filing because of a possible new benefit plan offering if requested by Vista's, or because an adjustment to the filing to account for the impact on rates of hospital budget submissions in July. So I'm going to put that whole motion.
Sorry for that.
No, it's all right.
We wanted to get it all in there and correct.
I'll put that in the chat.
And just a 2-second on the hospital budgets, what happens is they make assumptions in April of what's going to happen to the hospital budgets that are being submitted in June, or right around the 1st of July. So we've made the agreement with Vista's in the past that if that is significant one way or the other, we will make that change. And then whatever actually gets ultimately approved in September, we won't make a change to that because of a kind of a difficult situation that arose a few years ago where we were trying to make these changes before and after filing. So
all right, so I am waiting on someone to make that motion. Thank you, Cheryl. Do I have a second? Thank you, Suzanne. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? None. Passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, moving on. Vermont NEA report. Mr. Mark.
Any questions? It is, of course, as usual, a very short, concise document. If there's obviously any questions or concerns about it or general comments, I'm happy to take them. Otherwise, I don't think I have a lot to say, and that's probably a blessed thing.
Any comments or questions? All right. Seeing none, I don't know that we have, oh yes, I don't know that we have approved that report in the past. So I think
I
Use the
think we
word
have.
we accept it. We accept it. All right.
Accept it,
Can I
cool.
can I have a motion to accept the report? Thank you, Lisa. Second.
Second.
Thank you, Cheryl. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, none. Passes unanimously. Thank you. All right. Now let's get into some meaty stuff. GLP-1 discussion.
It's a meaty one for sure. Mark, do you want to kick this one off?
I'll kick it off and then you and I can tag team on it. This has been an ongoing discussion among the management team, and if we were privy to conversations of management teams of other ASOs, no doubt they are having the same conversation. And in fact, we know in some states in the public sector and also with ASOs, different pools, if you will, have decided to either not cover these medications for weight loss or to take some other measure to try to contain costs. These are a class of medications that we have seen a dramatic jump both in utilization and in particular with price, very substantial increases. And we are compelled, therefore, as a management team, to bring for you discussion a proposal which we'll get into in due course. And I believe we're going to act on it in June. Is that right, Bobby Joe?
Yeah, if that's the plan, yeah.
Right, if the board supports that decision. So this is a sort of a preliminary conversation, laying a foundation. So these medications, Ozempic, Wegovy, Zepbound, they are generally often referred to as weight reduction medications. They have and are being used now by folks who suffer from diabetes, but they are also used by folks who are simply struggling to lose weight. They are medications that come with some particularly serious side effects for some patients, particularly of the gastrointestinal nature. Research shows that a fair number of people who begin taking the medications do not stay with that particular regimen for different reasons. In some cases, it's cost. In some cases, it's side effects or some combination of those two things. The research also suggests that, shows at this point in time that people on these medications, when they go off the medications, they tend to gain the weight back, or at least some significant amount of it, unless they are successful at making some fairly substantial changes in lifestyle, exercise, nutrition, and perhaps, controlling other kinds of medical conditions. But short of those lifestyle changes, once people come off the medication, as a rule, they put the weight back on. So we as a management team have been, again, following the trajectory of utilization and cost, and both reached a stage where we felt compelled to act. We reached out to Blue Cross Blue Shield of Vermont. Like us, they had also been tracking utilization and cost and came to the same conclusions that we did, that these medications are so costly at present that they are going to restrict, they've recently decided that they are going to restrict access to the medication for weight loss reduction only. So that if you are taking the medication in conjunction with treatment for your diabetes, you will continue to have access to it. Blue Cross is still trying to figure out if they're going to offer the medication for people who have a particular cardiac issue that falls under the euphemism of MACE. People with that condition often take these medications as well. Sometimes that's a condition that also tracks with diabetes, sometimes not. Blue Cross is continuing to decide whether or not they're going to offer this medication to folks with MACE, as well as to those with diabetes, but they are going to not offer these medications as a covered benefit for weight reduction alone. And that decision for them, assuming it holds, and we have no reason to believe it won't, would go into effect on January 1 of 2026. So in addition to our independent research and some pretty deep conversations with Carrie Carmichael at Remedy Analytics, we've been waiting for some sense of direction from Blue Cross, and that has come. So why don't I pause here for a moment? Bobby Joe, do you want to talk a little bit about the numbers in terms of utilization and cost?
Yeah, any questions from Mark or I before we go into that? So I asked Carrie Carmichael from Remedy to provide me kind of a snapshot of where were we a year ago, where are we today as far as utilization. To Mark's point, the cost has always been high, but it continues to increase. And some of the prescriptions are more costly than others. So for example, purchasing Wegovy is around $1,300 a month, and that's prior to rebates. And then, but purchasing Zepbound is more in the $800 to $900 range. So part of our overall cost also contributes to who's, you know, being prescribed what. And all of these things have rebate implications as well. So if you pull back on offering Wegovy to just a subset of people, they just jack up the price for everyone else and not provide rebates. So it's really, you can't win on this. You can't just pull it back and say, well, let's increase, you know, the BMI count or something like that, because they'll just make you pay the same amount just for less people, which is really frustrating for us. But if you look, what Carrie provided for me just this week was a look at May of 23 through May of 24, you know, 12 months versus 24 through 25. In that first segment, there was 521 patients, and the overall cost, the gross cost was 3.4 million. So that feels like a lot of money, right? That itself is 1 percentage point of our rates, a little over. The second year has ballooned, almost tripled with regard to patients. It's now 1,420 to the tune of 11.4 million, which is almost $8 million of an increase in 1 year. And the trajectory continues to increase. You know, if you look at the number of people that we have in our pool, and the average number is 42% of the average group would be considered obese. I mean, that could be 8,000 people in our pool. I mean, that would put us out of business. And we're only at 1,400 at this point. So that's something that we're looking at. The other piece was, what was we just heard, we asked Blue Cross to give us an idea of what the savings would be if we had removed these products from our current rates. And for FY25 that we're into, or excuse me, I think it's FY26 for the upcoming rates, had we taken it out, it would have reduced the rates by 1.7%, which is I mean, that's a pretty significant number. And I suspect that the impact will be even higher once they start looking at this year's utilization, projecting forward. But I am still working on getting additional information on that.
I would just add to Bobby Joe's discussion of cost that I've shared with you that Maryland was the first state to create a prescription drug affordability board to place caps on high cost medications. They're going to begin that work this summer. And of the 6 medications they have identified to do that work initially, Ozempic, the weight loss reduction drug Ozempic, had made the cut. So Maryland's going to be doing it for their entire public sector very likely soon for the very reasons that we're talking about. And also, and I hope this is clear in how we're talking about this in our tone, this is not an easy decision for us at all. And we've been talking about it for some time. And should the board affirm a recommendation to not cover these drugs for weight reduction only, but for diabetes and potentially for MACE, we would see it as a suspension of coverage until such time as the cost of these medications becomes more reasonable. And again, as I said earlier, we are certainly not alone in grappling with this problem.
And I think, Mark, also not only the cost comes down, but it's also the we show more long-term effectiveness, as well as, you know, a better handle on what are the long-term what is this word I'm looking for? I'm sorry. Long-term
Side effects.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, Chris, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to clarify, I think I know the answer to this, but the numbers that you were talking about, those were only the weight loss portion.
Yes, that's
Correct.
specific.
That is
Yeah.
not, it did not include the people who are taking it for diabetes.
Yes, that's an additional almost $7 million.
We also recognize that when people lose large amounts of weight, and there are lots of success stories with these medications, we recognize that has an impact on their health and potentially on medical services and claims in other areas. We can't quantify that as yet. And perhaps down the road, we'll have a better ability to do so, which will also inform our thinking. But again, at present, with all of that in mind, the acceleration of cost is just impossible to bear at this point in time, given all the other cost pressures that we're under.
Mark and I were talking earlier about how these prescriptions work, and part of it is it kind of changes something in your brain chemistry to make you stop thinking about food, which is why there's been talk about, could this medication eventually work on drug addicts, because there's that stop thinking about what that thing is. And the other thing that it does is it slows down the absorption of food and the digestion, which makes you stay fuller longer. So if a person is not able to stay on that drug long term, when they come off that drug, they're going to start feeling hungrier quicker, and potentially that, change to the brain would come back, that they would be thinking about food more. So it's unfortunate that we're in the situation that we have to have this conversation, but that's what we've found out so far.
Questions? Yes, Suzanne.
Maybe I'm wrong, but I thought that initially when this started becoming utilized for weight reduction, that people who needed it for controlling their diabetes were having a hard time. Was there a scarcity kind of thing to get it? Is that still true, or did the pharmaceuticals just ramp up?
They did ramp up, and the shortage is officially over. And actually, as of May 22nd, so Thursday, you may have seen on TV where these other companies have been allowed to create these drugs and sell them, aside from, the whole patent issue that we've talked about before, and they've been able to sell them. So on groups like Noom, Weight Watchers, HERS, there's all these other groups that are selling. Roe is another one. They've been selling them, but they're supposed to stop by Thursday. So if you're also going to have a group of people who are all of a sudden not going to have access to these prescriptions anymore, who may contact their health plan, again, looking for coverage. So it could actually backfire a little bit and have us have an increase in the next few weeks for folks who can no longer get them.
And the patent is 20 years before?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Yeah, they can run 20 years.
Yep. And they will make a fortune.
Oh, yeah. And I think I recall somebody saying something about how much cheaper it was somewhere else, but anyway.
Yes. If you were in Spain, this would be a very different.
Yes, exactly. I know a guy.
Yeah. Any other questions that we can?
I will say two things. Well, one is I know a number of people who are on GLP-1s. I don't know if they have. I know my one neighbor has diabetes, and I could see a significant weight loss. He's lost about 50 pounds. And I have read that, like Mark, I'm glad you brought that up. When you lose that much weight and you go from being obese to overweight, the health benefits are dramatic. But I'm with you, Mark. We can't quantify it, right? So it might be worth it, but we just don't know. And I've read stories about people who rebound after they get off, right? So I totally agree with that. I also, another note, not as serious. Do you know the drug comes from the Gila monster lizard in the American Southwest?
No.
Something
Wow.
about its metabolism and its ability to, and like you were talking about. So,
Wow.
yeah, let's not kill every animal because there are
Yes.
some benefits, right?
Right. Well,
All right. So we are not, all right, any additional comments or questions?
or things you would like us to find out before we come to you in June to make this an official request.
One thing I would like to know is, I love the fact that you gave examples of who's not covering it, and then we can go read the rationale because none of us are medical professionals, right? Could you find bodies, organizations that are covering it for weight loss and why?
Sure.
Okay. Just to give us that opposing viewpoint.
You know, about a year ago, Bobby Joe and I and John had a conversation with a woman named Cora Opsel, who is executive director of the 32 BJ Fund, which I think I've talked about in my reports. It's roughly 270,000 covered members, 5,000 employers. It's like VEHI on steroids. And I remember we were talking to Cora about something else, but we got on this subject. And I remember Bobby Joe asking her, "What are you guys doing about it?"
Mhm.
And Cora gave a response, and I know Cora well, and she is a very data-driven person. And she said something that I think was true of a lot of pools at that time. She says, "We're basically waiting for more information. We're waiting to see how this all sugars out with research and what other people are doing." And my sense, and this is also true from talking with Carrie at Remedy, is that everybody's looking around to see what everybody else is doing. Because I think this is a really unusual situation. And folks weren't quite certain initially how to proceed with it. So I think the question's a really good one. For those people who are covering it for weight reduction, why are they doing so? Are they seeing something we haven't seen? Or are they also, in a way, just kind of floundering and waiting for some further direction from the market?
I'm really curious to see if somebody has said, we think that there's the juice is worth the squeeze, right? The money that
Right.
we're paying up front
Right.
is going to lead to decreased claims from those individuals down the road.
Right.
And we know enough now to say it is worth it.
Right.
Lance?
Yeah, I just, and you may already have this information, Bobby Joe, is nationally, what percentage of users, GLP-1 users are using it for weight loss? And then what percentage of our folks are using it, for weight loss, and how those two numbers compare?
Yep, I can
You may
definitely
already
get it.
have that.
Yeah, I have it for us, for sure, that I can send over to you, but I'll look and see if I can find something more nationally.
Cheryl?
On things like this, something that I sometimes do is I think about, well, if I had to stand up in a room of 200 taxpayers, would I be able to justify this to those taxpayers and those people that vote on the budget, the amount that this is costing our program? And I think if I can't, then that's where I start thinking, well, if I can't justify it to them, I need to rethink why we would spend our money in that way. So,
That's a good point. You know, the other complication here is that our culture has a very problematic relationship with weight. And there are all kinds of cultural factors that come into play when you're talking about an issue like this that's different from other conditions. And I know folks who don't have diabetes who have struggled their entire lives trying to lose weight. And so not having access to this benefit for a medication that costs this much, it can be a very significant, impact in their life.
sure.
Lisa, I know you want to chat and then we'll go to Chris.
I just had a question about whether or not, because obviously we're discussing the financial aspects, but it's based on the medical. Are there any large scale medical studies, like public health studies being done on this right now? Because this looks like a metadata type thing that would be more I mean, most significant. From my point of view, that would be most significant.
You know, Bobby Joe and I were talking about this morning, and I said to her, my son-in-law is an emergency medicine doctor, but he's also a health policy researcher. And no matter what I ask him, he always manages to point me in the direction of research. So I will put that question to him. I mean, Bobby Joe and I have been reading a lot of stuff that's come to us through Remedy and other sources, but I don't know if there's been any major trials as yet that we would feel comfortable saying gives us a definitive sense of whether we should offer the drug for weight reduction or not. And I think that's part of the challenge right now.
My daughter is doctor of public health, and I'll ask her as well.
Please, that'd be great.
Bobby Joe, put the information, Lance, that you had asked in the chat.
And again, this is prior to rebates. So there are rebates that are applied, but we don't know what those will be at this point. So the only thing we can go by is gross cost at this point.
Okay, thank you. Chris?
So the other thing I just wanted to mention, that we haven't fully explored this, but I know in one of the meetings we had with Blue Cross, they mentioned how there is another avenue for patients who are not covered in their insurance plan for these drugs, that they can go right to the manufacturer and get them cheaper. So if we do take the coverage away from our plan, there is another avenue, and it's like less than half the cost that the person would have to pay directly. So if that person really wants to stay on the drug, it's still a cost. It is, and it's still a big cost. I think it was around $500 a month, but it's less than what we're paying now. So I just wanted to make people aware of that.
Thank you, Chris. I'm also wrapping my head around that.
Well, they want to charge the insurance companies more. And they're like, okay, if your insurance isn't going to cover it, we still want to give it to you, but so we'll give it to you for a lot less because we can.
Yeah, there's all kinds of drug discount programs out there to do exactly what Chris is saying for a variety of conditions.
Mm-hmm. Keep you on the drug.
That's right.
Yes.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm. Cheryl?
So if somebody had an HSA, would they be able to use their HSA dollars to help pay the cost if they paid for it themselves directly?
Yes.
Yes. And an
Yes.
FSA.
Correct. And the FSA. Yeah.
Okay.
They cannot use their HRA dollars though, if it's not a covered benefit.
Right. But HSA and FSA, they could use. Yep.
Right. Which lowers the cost even more because it's pre-tax.
Right.
So.
It would
And the
drain your
age-
FSA pretty fast, though.
Yeah.
That's the
Yep.
problem.
HSA has higher limits, so that,
Yes, it does, if you can afford them.
but, you know.
All right. Anything else? Any other questions or any other requests for information for June? Our June meeting. If something does come up, feel free to email Mark and Bobby Joe, and we'll look to get that information. And if you get that information, if you can send it in advance, don't wait for like the week before the meeting, because I know that this is a big issue for because of cost and because of health benefits, right? It's a huge dilemma for us. So the more information we have to make an informed decision, the better. Okay. So, any final thoughts? Okay. All right. Thank you for the good discussion. Thank you for the homework, Mark and Bobby Joe. All right. Let's move on to legislative update.
So you have in your packet your 77-page mini novel, a summary of two key legislative initiatives. One related strictly to reference-based pricing. The second, a bill that is still moving to the legislature. It's now in House Appropriations S-126. It was voted out of the House Healthcare Committee, I think last week, on a vote of 8-3. And all signs are is that it is going to pass and that the governor will sign it. At least he has not made any indications to date that he intends to veto it or is thinking about it. The bill seems to have a lot of support at the moment, and I think with good reason. I think it's a very impressive and important piece of legislation. And so these two issues, reference-based pricing and S126, are really tied together in some sense. And by that, I mean the efforts by Vermont NEA and VSEA to secure legislative mandate for a reference-based pricing initiative for the public sector only, roughly 60,000 lives, our pool, and the state medical funds pool, did not come to pass. Not because of the merits of the idea, interestingly, but because S126 will be moving in some fashion or other, which is still unclear, authorizes the Green Mountain Care Board to begin instituting reference-based pricing for hospital budgets no later than fiscal year 2027. So Vermont conceivably will be the first state in the nation to implement a reference-based pricing methodology for all of its hospitals and for the entire commercial insurance market, not just the public sector, where it has been implemented in several states so far, but for the entire commercial sector. And again, no later than FY27. That's a very significant development, because it says that the legislature recognizes that in order to control hospital costs and hospital prices and hospital budgets, which are the main drivers of commercial insurance premiums. Again, in our backyard, 55% of our claims costs are tied to hospital costs. The legislature has, I think, realized that the only really effective way long-term to begin controlling and bringing down these costs is through some regulation in the public interest, and reference-based pricing benchmarked to Medicare is the way that will begin. And in time, that reference-based pricing foundation will be the bridge by which Green Mountain Care Board transitions in time to hospital global budgets, which is also part of S126. So this movement, direction toward the entire commercial insurance market, regulation by benchmarking pricing to Medicare, once more, a very significant development. How quickly it will unfold, whether it will begin with specific services and then move more broadly to budgets as a whole, the actual benchmark parameters, none of that is stipulated in S126. It's up for, I think, a lot more conversation and public debate and conversations with hospitals through the Green Mountain Care Board deliberative process. And I look forward to sort of listening in on that and contributing as I think I have any benefit to do. But again, it has to begin no later than FY27. For me, the greatest disappointment in not getting the reference-based pricing public sector initiative is that I think it could have helped us substantially with the FY27 rates, because we were looking to begin reference-based pricing for the public sector on January 1 of 2026. Green Mountain Care Board, in its process, has to set rules, which will also slow this process somewhat, even if it uses an expedited process to do so. But once that rulemaking is done and the deliberative process begins, we'll have a better sense of where these benchmarks are actually going to be relative to Medicare. You'll recall that our initiative had been at 200% of Medicare, and for the 6 PPS hospitals only, our 6 largest hospitals. This law, S126, would apply to all hospitals in time. I imagine the Green Mountain Care Board will begin with the PPS hospitals, because that is where the lion's share of the claims are. For us, I think, if I recall from the Green Mountain Care Board analysis, estimated savings of $79 million for our 2 pools combined over the period of the analysis, roughly 5 years. No, excuse me, 79 million was for the last full year, 2022. About 87% of that cost savings projection was from the PPS hospital. And the lion's share of it, of course, is UVMMC. And for us, that's significant because we have a large concentration of members in Chittenden County, and they get a lot of care at UVMMC. So again, that's my sadness around it, but to know that the entire commercial insurance market is moving in this direction is very hopeful, very promising. The two unions are going to continue, obviously, to track this, to look at its scope, the shape that it takes, the speed with which it unfolds, and we will assess if we believe it's necessary, whether going back to the legislature for an RBP initiative just for the public sector makes any sense. But at this point in time, we're going to wait and see what happens in the regulatory arena. In terms of S-126, I've talked, I think, enough about it that you have a pretty good sense of it in relationship to reference-based pricing. And by the way, the reference-based pricing in that law would apply not only to hospitals, but the Green Mountain Care Board can set rates for non-hospital care as well, benchmarked to Medicare. So again, looking at the entire system. The bill is also progressive and promising with respect to moving Vermont toward a strategic healthcare plan. We actually don't have one. What does this state want to accomplish in the realm of healthcare for all of its citizens? And how does it want to do that? The bill also looks to revitalize and expand access to primary care, mental health care, home health, community care generally, because we know that's the foundation of a very healthy healthcare system. When people get the primary care they need, the mental health care they need, when they can get care at home and not in a hospital, they tend to be healthier. We tend to catch conditions sooner, and they tend not to end up in hospital beds when they don't need to be there. All of the research nationally and internationally shows you've got a robust primary care system, and I mean that sort of broadly. You have lower costs and you have healthier people. And this bill is intending to expand access to those community care centers and treatment regimens. There is also a provision in the bill, and we talked a little bit about with Blue Cross on this, that requires AHS, the Agency of Human Services, to work with hospitals to lower their costs by 2.5%, to lower their budgets by 2.5% in FY26. What I don't understand, and I still didn't understand it after talking with Blue Cross, and I don't think they quite understand it yet, is what the intersection is between that mandate that the hospitals have to actually lower their cost by 2.5% in FY26 and the Green Mountain Care Board budget process, which has advised the hospitals that they are to come in at no more than 3% increase on their FY25 budgets. So
Mark,
yeah,
can I
please, Mike.
interject here?
Sure.
I just read something. Bernie did a news conference and one of the legislators spoke, and it's not a mandate for 2.5.
Is it a recommendation?
I forget what word they use.
Okay. So it's probably advisory then. Thank you, Mike. I did not know that. In case you're ever on Jeopardy and they ask you what the original bill said, the original bill actually began at 10%. They were to cut their cost by 10. That was the mandate. Then it went down to 5. Then it went down to 2.5, and now it's advisory. At any rate, that's the gist of S-126. There's a lot more in the bill that doesn't directly impact us, but down the road, I think it have very positive implications for the healthcare system, for keeping people healthy. And I think finally, my final remarks, I think this bill reflects the emergency warnings that the Act 167 report called to our attention last year, that the healthcare system was in dire sort of existential crisis. And Blue Cross, having lost $152 million over the last 3 years, and now struggling with solvency, I should say, that has also concentrated people's minds in a very, very sort of sharp way. And the legislature this session, well, I think not intending initially to think this big about healthcare and health insurance, has had no other option but to do so. And this bill is, again, really promising. We'll see what it looks like when all is said and done, but I feel pretty good about it. All right, there's my little speech.
Questions, comments? Yeah, I'll send this link. It wasn't the,
Was it Digger or
it
Vermont
was
Public?
Digger, but it wasn't the, I'm confusing Digger articles. It wasn't the Bernie. It wasn't the Bernie one. It was from Friday.
Okay.
One of my questions is, in your write-up, you mentioned critical access hospitals and versus PPS hospitals.
Right.
So what does PPS stand for?
So it stands for Prospective Payment System, and it refers to hospitals that enter into agreements with Medicare to receive prospective payments from the federal government for the care of people enrolled in Medicare. And these PPS hospitals, as a rule, tend to be the largest hospitals in a state and nationally. Our critical access hospitals, as I'm sure you know, these are small hospitals. They're generally rurally based, and they operate under a different payment reimbursement system than the PPS hospitals.
Okay.
So in our RBP proposal, we had focused just on the big six. But this bill is looking more globally, as I said.
Any other comments or questions for Mark? So related to this, but it's not the same bill, something came up last night or yesterday, right? So there's a House
Yes.
bill around prescription costs. Can you guys talk to what that is? And we ended up signing off. So thank you to everybody for replying. So we were able to add the board to that note of
Well,
support.
I saw white smoke coming out of Visbit's headquarters yesterday, so I immediately called to find out what the good news was. Actually, the truth is Bobby Joe called me and said, "Have you seen Allison's email?" I said, "Not yet." So I checked it out. We talked, and Bobby Joe was calling to my attention as Allison was calling to hers, H266. And this is a bill that has sort of been in circulation, but not gotten a lot of attention as yet. I think overshadowed somewhat by S126, and also another bill, I want to say 482, which allows the Green Mountain Care Board to midterm adjust hospital budgets in order to protect the solvency of an insurance carrier. Also a very important piece of legislation that we think is going to pass. So H266, somewhat ironically, is sort of reference-based pricing for infusion medications that are administered at a hospital or in a provider's office and are part of what's known as a 340B program medication. 340B is a federal program that gives hospitals and other providers the right to a very significant discount on the prices of high-cost medications. And initially, the goal of the program was to help hospitals and providers save money by giving them this very significant discount off what PBMs charge VEHI and others, in order for that money to be used by hospitals to serve under either uninsured or underserved populations. 340B is something very different today, even though it's technically still that program. So what H266 would do is say, okay, we, the state of Vermont, are going to cap for our PPS hospitals, those big six I just talked about, the cost of these infusion medications, very high cost medications administered at a hospital or in a doctor's office, at 120% of average sale price, ASP. So as we were talking about referencing hospital prices to Medicare rates, this would reference the cost of these medications to average sales price. And I believe average sales price actually originates in the federal government with CMS. So it's a reference-based pricing program. And as you can see in our testimony, Bobby Joe and I worked on this yesterday. If this bill had been in effect when we set our FY25 rates, is that right, Bobby Joe? We would have saved somewhere in the neighborhood of $11.9 million. Oh, no, we spent $11.9 million on these meds.
Now we spent 18.2.
Sorry, 18.2. Thank you. Lady with the numbers. Thank you.
Yeah, we would
and
have, we would have saved 11.2.
We
and
would have
been
saved 11, correct? Would have gone down to like 6.9 million.
Yeah.
Roughly 3 percentage points. Just that one change could have shaved 3 percentage points off our FY25 rates. So The bill's under conversation right now in the House Health Committee. It's very late in the session, so we don't know if it's going to get voted out and if it'll actually be voted on by the House as a whole. We also don't know if there's enough time for it to go to the Senate for deliberation. If in fact the legislature is only going to be around for 2 more weeks, that's questionable. Nonetheless, it's again, very promising bill. Another sign of the legislature recognizing the importance of regulation. And it's a no-brainer for us to endorse this. It just makes so much sense. It does not pose a threat to the hospitals at all in terms of their fiscal solvency. It would help our bottom line and would help everybody in the state of Vermont. And final comment, this is, I guess, more editorial than anything. The discounts on some of these medications, they are massive. I mean, you can actually purchase as a hospital through 340B high-cost medications at literally pennies on the dollar in some cases, and still charge top dollar to carriers and ASOs. I was telling Bobby Joe today about a medication I heard about through the 340B, again, very significantly discounted, but the hospital still charged the commercial sector $85,000 for the medication, right? So that spread, right, between what they actually pay discounted and what we are charged, that's where the savings come in when you reference these medications price-wise to ASP.
The 340B program has become a huge moneymaker for nonprofits.
Yes.
And I read scary stories about, I forget where it was, some hospital somewhere. I'll find it. It was like a New York Times article, but there's also a lot of scrutiny on this program. And I remember when I worked at the Medical Center and Health Network, how important the 340B program was to the bottom line. So the hospitals are making a lot of money from this, and it's like you said, it's free money for them, right? They buy it low and they sell it high.
They sell high. That's right.
They're not adding any value.
When the RAND Hospital Cost Transparency Study was released last year, I got a call from Marilyn Bartlett from Nashby, and she says, "Hey, what's going on with your 340B program in Vermont?" I said, "Well, it's expensive." She goes, "No, Mark," she says, "you are the most expensive state in the country on 340B." And I went to RAND, I found the table, and sure enough, we are leading the country in 340B pricing, which is just hard to comprehend that we can be that far ahead of the pack.
So
for a small state.
So H266 does it cover everything that's in 340B? Or just the infusion?
I think that's a good question, Mike. I don't know. I have not had a chance to read in depth Blue Cross's stuff on it. I definitely know it's the infusion. I don't think it covers every drug in the 340B pantheon. Bobby Joe, do you know?
I don't remember. I know it specifically referenced infusion. And Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that we did have all of our infusion drugs. They were supposed to be going through a particular vendor. Blue Cross had used, I think it was Accredo at the time, and they wanted all of these prescriptions to go through this one vendor to try to get the best costs. And I believe the legislature put it in place a few years ago because the hospital said, no way, you can't, only go through this one avenue to get these prescriptions. They should be able to get them from us too. And this is what we got for it.
We actually testified on that. We said to the legislature, or the legislative committee at the time, I think it was in the Senate, that this would raise our costs because we are getting a significant discount through this specialty pharmacy. It was Accredo. Can't remember what the specialty pharmacy is. That's what's with Optum today, whatever it is. But the legislature decided that patients should have a choice. Anyways, more to come on all of that. And again, even if it doesn't pass this session, I think it's going to definitely be back next session.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on the legislative update? Thank you, Mark and Bobby Joe. Appreciate it. Do you think that there'll be any other action? Oh, we were meeting in June. was going to say, when is crossover and when is the session over?
The crossover already happened a few weeks
Did.
ago, and it's only supposed to last till, is it 2 more weeks?
Yeah, I think the legislature is tentatively scheduled to leave in 2 weeks. The budget has passed, and I think the education bill is the last major piece of legislation that's still being debated.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. If no other comments, then let's move on to next item, which is plan redesign, consideration of a subcommittee. So Lance and I were supposed to talk about it, but we've neglected to talk about it when we were chatting. So the discussion point from last meeting was to potentially create a subcommittee, whether it's 2 or 4 members, that would dive into the plan redesign with Bobby Joe and Mark and come back with recommendations or options to the full board. So I'm going to open this up for discussion to see what board members think about that. Suzanne?
So I also thought a component of what the subcommittee was going to do was to look at criteria, to talk about, what were our goals? I mean, is it purely to save money? Is it to be focused in different areas? I just was going to check to see if that was still true.
Yes, thank you for that. Yeah. Guiding principles on what we're trying to do with that process. So, right, they could come back with that as the first step versus recommendations on plan, the actual design.
So what did you have in mind, Mike, or not? Or are you just throwing it out to us?
I'm getting the temperature of the board, and I would also ask if anybody would like to volunteer to serve on that subcommittee. Mark, you don't have a poker face.
I think I have to be honest. I think that's management team responsibility. Can't escape it.
Volunteer someone else.
No, I'm really looking for 2 board members, right? One from the NEA, one from the VSBA to serve. So that would be either Cheryl or Andrew or Lisa or Suzanne.
I think Suzanne came, Suzanne's been kind of spearheading this. So I wonder if she wanted to volunteer for this.
Are you on my Christmas card list anymore, Lance?
I could be.
I don't know what the time commitment moving forward is and when it is, but you know what? What the hell? I'm in for a penny. I'm in for a pound. I'll do it.
Thank you.
And I would be happy to serve on the subcommittee. I mean, obviously I have a lot of firsthand knowledge of how the plans work in the schools and what we deal with.
Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you both. All right, so let me make a motion, or I'll ask for a motion to create a subcommittee, or actually it's not a committee, to create a committee on plan redesign, with the first task to come up with guiding principles for our plan redesign work. So we'll create the committee and then we'll vote in members. So again, I'll ask for a motion to create a committee to work on plan redesign with the first task of coming up with guiding principles to that design work. Thank you, Lance. Do I have a second?
Second.
Cheryl? All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. And I actually I should look at the bylaws. I don't even remember if we have a process for populating committees.
Well, I know something's been hung up on that before, so I'm thinking that we might.
I remember that committees, we may designate, here we go. The board may designate committees. Doesn't say much. Okay. Easy peasy. All right. So we've created the committee. Suzanne and Cheryl have volunteered to serve. All those in favor of that, of those members, say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Motion passes unanimously. So thank you, Suzanne and Cheryl, again for volunteering for additional work. We'll let you two coordinate. If you need support from Lance and I, or direction or anything, please feel free to ring us up, and please leverage Mark and Bobby Joe and work together with them. And that on that first task of bringing what I said, guiding principles, but you said it another way, Suzanne.
I talked about maybe criteria, but that's the same thing. I also think we ought to talk about timelines in conjunction with those. I don't mind guiding principles as a title. Cheryl and I can throw that around. But I do think we probably want to work with Bobby, Joe, and Mark, because there's things maybe Cheryl knows them about timelines. So if we want to make a change for X, when do we have to have them ready? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Great. Thank you guys again. This will increase your pay by 50%.
Thank you. Doing it for the money, always.
Big bucks,
They're
Cheryl.
big bucks. All right. Any other comments or questions on plan redesign? Okay. Next item, update on ASO considerations. So we talked about potentially looking at alternatives to Blue Cross Blue Shield for our administrative services only contract. We got a good write-up from the management team. Lance and I are meeting, actually, we don't really have an update yet because we're meeting with the commissioner, with the chairs of the commission tomorrow morning. So we're gonna talk through with them that. I haven't sent them that memo yet, Lance. I want to talk about it verbally. I want to find out from them what they think. Do they think that moving from Blue Cross Blue Shield will be, 10% savings? And so we'll update the board in June on that conversation, or even before, if it's significant. Anything else on that, Lance, that you wanted to chat to weigh in on?
No, that's it.
Okay. Questions, comments on that? Okay. All right. Item 12. We are moving along.
Mhm.
Visbit contract for July 1st.
So this contract is finally up. It's been in place for a number of years. I brought it to the Visbit board in December to ask if they had any requested changes. I asked them about the timeline. The way the contract was set up many moons ago was it was a 5-year contract, and then it would auto renew for 3 years 2 times. So that's what it's done the last 11-ish years. So, we recognize the auto renew, that this is a longer contract than that we do for most things, but we also have just under 8 full-time people who are part of the Visbit staff that work on VEHI. It includes myself and John, Chris's payroll and what's her title? She's a clerk.
Sorry. So she's the accounting clerk, but she does all the accounts payable, and she takes in all the payments for VEHI. So all the members paying their bills every month.
Yeah, we've got the entire wellness team that works full time for VEHI. So those are the reasons. It takes a lot of planning to have 8 FTEs, which is why we do it in advance. So they were asking to keep that 5-year contract in place. And there really wasn't a lot more to it that changed other than dates. But we wanted to just introduce it today. If folks had a chance to to review it and see if there's any questions that we could answer in advance before we need to vote on it next month. Or you do. John?
Just to remind the board, it's Visbit, it's a cost, not cost plus, it's just a straight cost. Chris keeps track of what it costs to run the program at the end of the year, trues it up, trues it down. There's nothing built in, there's no percentages built in for Visbit. It's strictly what does it cost to run the program.
Questions from the board? So I had some concerns that, well, I'll just say overall, I thought this was a very light contract. I don't want to rock the boat where the waters are smooth, but I was surprised to see things like the only thing that we can do if we're unhappy with the services is leave, is terminate. Right? There's no cause, there's no way to go into mediation or to have a third party. And the other thing that concerned me was the lack of specificity on the services to be provided. And I was comparing it to the NEA contract, NEA services contract. So, like section 2, it doesn't really say, right? It says services shall be administrative, financial, and wellness, but it doesn't really talk about outcomes or expectations. So, I mean, it says, here's what you will do, and you're going to maintain the finance, but I just thought it was, my read of it, I thought it was pretty light. So I guess I wanted to get, has anyone else given that feedback, or is the visit board all good with it? And
We didn't get any additional information from Visbit on it. If you're asking the management team, this contract's been in place for a really long time, and it probably could use a little more of a refresh, which we're more than happy to add in more specificity regarding the services and expectations. That's not a problem at all.
I think there's another document which is on my desk that talks about what Visbit specifically does. Chris, do you know what I'm talking about?
I was going to say, I think there is another document, because I fully remember going through and talking about okay, we do this, we collect the payments, we do this, we do that, we do that, we issue all the checks, and
But
yeah.
it's not in the contract because the contract has been around since the invention of dirt. So it hasn't been changed or updated. There's nothing done to it. So I think that was when the VEHI president, when Laura stepped down as president, and it delineated responsibilities for what Visbit would do. That's the document I'm thinking of.
so maybe, so I would love to, if that was put into the contract, whatever is appropriate. The other thing is, have we had a lawyer look at this contract recently?
Not
Does
recent.
VEHI have a lawyer?
We do have someone that we contract with, that we use, yes.
Wait, when you say we, do you mean VEHI or do you mean Visbit?
I mean VEHI.
Okay.
VEHI has an attorney, but this contract was put together by not the normal Visbit attorney. It was another, again, I can't remember. I met with her once a few years ago. But there hasn't been a need because it just keeps auto renewing. So this is I think for all of us except Chris, this is the first go round on this.
Mark?
Yeah, I've been sort of sitting here thinking historically, since I have the distinction of being the longest serving and oldest trust administrator. And Chris and Bobby, Joe, and John may have looked at the archives more recently. I think this is the second. I think the first 5-year contract came into effect during Laura's tenure. Is that correct?
Let me look.
And that I think previously the contracts had been for 1 year, I think for both parties. But I would not bet on that. I think the first 5-year contract with auto renewal began with Laura's tenure.
Probably, yes,
Yeah.
that would make sense, yeah.
And that this would be the first time we're reconsidering it since
Mhm.
then, right? Okay.
Yes, that's
thanks.
correct, yeah. I'd say that's correct. I don't know if they were 1 year prior to that. I would say we were in a much different era when this contract was created years ago, that we didn't have this many employees that were relying on these, on this work, so.
The other
Um,
thing I would just add to that, Bobby Joe, is that, because I do remember the years of, they were 1 year or 2 year or whatever they were shorter contracts. We signed them every year. It's not just FTEs that we're talking about. We're also talking about a significant amount of investment in infrastructure. So if you remember, Bisbit built a building in 2011, which was large enough to house VEHI staff and all of VEHI swag. The other thing is we have extensive computer systems, which need to be there just because of VEHI. The capacity, the things that VEHI is doing, the graphics, the just all the different programs that sort of go outside the normal day-to-day business operations that Bisbit is involved in. So that's really why we sat down and said, we need a multi-year contract here, because we are making all this investment in infrastructure to go out here and support VEHI. So we need to make sure that we are not doing this and then 1 year later, everything is changed.
Thank you, Chris.
By the way, look what I found in our OneDrive. To the right,
Interesting.
right?
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about? This is
I would say
scope
so.
of services, right?
Was not attached to the contract.
2018.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that looks
So
a little bit more thorough.
yeah, yeah. This is what I like, except for, of course, the number one. So
Mike, I was gonna also say, I think when it was a 1 year contract, and I'm assuming here because I haven't been there that long, was when VEHI was buying insurance and was not an insurance company with all the, millions and millions of dollars that we're dealing with before we were buying insurance from Blue Cross.
Well, back in the day, when it was the 1 year contract, and again, this is historical memory, so it could be flawed. Visbit was employing, for VEHI purposes, or at least helping to pay for, I shouldn't say employ, pay for, John Gutman's position, Joe Zimmerman, Diane Cleary, Gillian. I think Gillian had at least one other colleague on the
Amy.
wellness team. Say
Yeah.
again?
Amy.
And then the wellness program expanded, actually, even during the years when it was a 1 year contract. So you folks would have had in the neighborhood of 6 to 7 people employed, even during the years of the 1 year contract.
No, because
Well,
no, but not FTEs, okay? Because John Gutman, Joe Zimmerman, we weren't paying for all of that, because there was always an allocation out to Bisbit for the work that we're doing under Bisbit's umbrella and our programs. So even myself, like right now, you pay for 40% of my salary. VEHI reimburses Bisbit for 40% of my salary. 60% of my salary is paid for by Bisbit. So
that's probably true for Diane Cleary, though, too, back in the day.
Diane was
Right,
partial. Everybody was
Right.
partial except for Amy and Gillian, who are 100%.
Right.
And actually back then, Amy wasn't either, because she was the receptionist. So there was a tiny little bit of her time. There was also because she was opening the mail and answering the phones for everybody. So the only person back then that was a full FTE devoted was Gillian.
But then there was a time, too, when you had additional people on wellness. That staff expanded over time.
I'm just going to interject, and I think that I want to hear from the board members, or any board member interested in looking at this services contract on an annual basis.
No, I'm not.
Okay.
I mean, I wonder if if we didn't have Visbit, what would we do? I mean, what would we, we'd be out, what,
Shh,
looking, I
don't-
know.
Well, I
Right.
often joke to my board, I said, I've never seen another organization that handles all of this for nothing. Like there's no 2% margin built in for Visbit. Like we've hired TPAs to handle our claims before, and they would charge us what it costs plus 5% or 10%. I'm like, this is a sweet deal for VEHI, but it works.
Can
All
I
right.
can I ask another question, Mike?
Sure.
What's the rationale for auto renewal after 5 years? Why does it auto renew after 5 years?
I don't know why that was put into place. That is what was in the contract at this point. It was just
Mm.
for ease that if nothing needed to change and nobody had any questions, it could just auto renew without having to redo the entire contract.
It seems, again, it just seems to me after 5 years, an auto renewal is unnecessary, that there should be at least a conversation about the document and its duration. So I don't understand. I mean, the 5 years is one thing, but the auto renewal, I've never understood the rationale for it.
And again, Mark, I think it wasn't that it could have been looked at. I think that's the thing, is it was available to look at, but if nobody raised any concerns, it would just auto renew. But that's.
So it's an auto renew, and then 2 additional terms each 3 years in duration. So I will tell you, Mark, I work for a company that does contracts, and we're now going to put in auto renewal because it forces the customer to act, right? The lack of action on their part means it's an auto renewal, and it's good for us as the services provider. So from Visbit perspective, I understand, like, you don't do anything, you're locked in for another, term. So I don't blame Visbit for doing it. It's good as a service provider to do that. As the customer to those services contract, I don't know, I might be open to just a 5-year term with no auto renewal, but it just means putting the auto renewal means we need to act. We need to have our shit together, if you'll excuse the French.
So I had asked, Mike, I asked Laura when I started, when the board is a little bit more contentious than it is today. I said, what happens if the Visbit contract were to expire and the board wouldn't vote to approve a new one, 3-3. And her answer, and I think she had checked it out with the attorneys, was DFR would say, you will continue as is. So.
You don't really have other options, so.
Does any board member want to make a proposal to strip out the auto renewal clause?
Just to be clear, I wasn't asserting that as a position. I was just curious as to rationale for it.
Well, I know.
Well, it
someone
seems
can
like
make.
it was.
Go
It
ahead,
seems
Lance.
like it was an insurance policy to make sure that we had a contract, that somebody was going to be running things, taking care of things. I should say not running things, but that's what it sounds like. But with a contentious board that can't agree on things, that made it where Visbit, if they couldn't agree on it, it was going to just auto renew. That makes sense to me.
In retrospect, it's probably good it was there.
I think you're right, Lance. I think that had a lot to do with it. Because basically, if Visbit stops, everything stops. Like, you won't pay any bills, you won't pay any claims, there's nobody to pay anything, Blue Cross will shut you down, no one will have insurance.
Yeah.
So here's the other thing that about this language that actually I'm less comfortable about. So it says, unless terminated, it will renew. Okay. So this is not a option to renew. This is not it's going to renew unless it's negotiated. Unless we terminate it, it will renew. So this is we can terminate, but it doesn't give us a renegotiation option.
But that's only for the two additional terms.
two additional terms, but you know,
But they're each
Just-
3 years in duration, right?
Right, so 6
Yeah.
more years.
Yeah.
Okay.
this is like
It's an
11
11-year
year,
contract.
it's an
Right,
11-year
right.
contract, and the only thing we can do is terminate. That's our only option.
What does section 5 say that it's referring to?
Section 5 is termination. So what my reading of this is it doesn't, here we go. Okay, wait, hold on. If either party renegotiate.
So
This-
it can be
this-
renegotiated.
Yeah, in the event of material changes in the
Changes.
regulatory environment, right?
Right.
I would be in favor of that kind of language written into this section to say at the end of each term, each party has the ability, has the option to renegotiate the terms of the contract.
The 11 years or the 5 years?
I would say at the end of the 5 years and at the end of the additional each, right? That's a
Okay.
normal thing, is to say,
Right.
hey, at the end of the term of the contract, you guys can you can renegotiate. But this says all you can do is terminate.
Mm.
What if you can't reach an agreement? That goes back to the original argument, right? What you
So
said?
yeah,
Uh-huh.
so our options would be, so at the end of the 5 years, the option is let it auto renew or terminate. What I'm suggesting is a third option, which is renegotiate the terms of the agreement.
And if you can't reach an agreement, I think
Then
that's what.
either we terminate or we let it auto renew.
Oh, okay, so there's, okay,
So it is those 3 options.
all right.
Yeah, it just gives a third option that you can renegotiate.
Yeah, I can add that.
Yep,
Great, thank you.
I'm okay with that.
John,
Mhm.
is that, do you suspect that once we make any adjustments, based on this feedback, that we will need to get it back to the Visbit board?
Right, I have to go back to the Visbit board. Our next meeting is mid-June, and then we'll meet again probably in September.
So we have to act by July 1st.
Ideally, yes,
Well,
yes.
yeah.
The Visbit
No.
board meet before or after us.
I think before,
June
June
12th.
12th.
and ours is after that.
Okay. I'm glad you brought this up this month. Okay.
I did.
So we'll see if you can bring this stuff to the visit board. I don't think that I think it's a reasonable ask from us.
So I will add in that document that has the services specifically. There is one other page, and Mark, I think we forgot to add it to the Vermont NEA one the last couple of times because I didn't realize it was an additional amendment, I think it's a code of conduct that was attached to the end of all of them. So I'll add that to it and I'll make sure that that's at the end of
Thanks,
yours
I'd
as
forgotten
well.
about them.
Yeah, I was like, uh-oh, I think this was missed. So I'll
Okay.
add the services piece. I'll update the renegotiation piece. If there's anything else that we see that looks like it needs a little, stronger language, we'll look at that too. Bring it to the Visbit board for their approval.
Okay. Great.
Anything else on that?
Again, not a great poker face. You went, anything else on that?
I mean, the Visbit board is a pretty reasonable group of folks, so.
All right. I don't see any other comments. So with that, there's no action by the board. All right. So we're on to our last topic, which is next meeting topics. So I've got the board work plan up here. So this is our June meeting. Management updates legislative, code of ethics, whistleblower, and then all of these contracts to approve. and the budget.
Yes.
And then prep for net position rebuild, an update from Lance and I on meeting with commission chairs, GLP-1, and potentially a September meeting. That's different. Okay.
I'd suggest, depending upon how fleet-footed Cheryl and I are, maybe an update from the committee.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sending her an email right now.
Love it.
What is the June
Plus-
meeting date? Bobby Joe, do you know?
Third Tuesday.
For some reason I have the 19th on the brain, but it could be wrong.
17th I have.
17th,
Yep.
yes.
Okay, so it's gonna be a little tight on the budget, just full disclosure, because the Visbit board votes on the budget June 12th. So I can't finalize it technically until they approve the budget. So that might miss the packet. But we can send it out as soon as we have it.
Do you think that you will not be able to make the, like, not have the information ready, the budget ready for the board to act on the 17th?
No, I think I'll have it by then. I just might miss the
Okay.
packet. Because the
Understood.
board has to, Visbit board has to meet on the 12th. So it may not be ready, depending on what day of
Oh,
week
that's
that all
Thursday.
falls in
Yeah.
the weekend and everything. I have a feeling that Bobby Joe will probably send the packet before then. So.
Okay. Okay. All right. Any other suggestions for June? Okay. All right. Well, that wraps up our agenda. If I don't see any other hands, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Cheryl. Seconded by
Second.
Suzanne. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Good. We are adjourned. Thank you for a very efficient meeting, everybody.
Hey,
Thank
hey,
you all.
just
Thank you,
Take care.
Chair.
a quick announcement,
night.
if you,
Oh.
if
Oh.
you get the journal opinion, they've been serializing a short story of mine. It started, the first piece was May 7th, and then there was one last week, and there'll be one tomorrow. It's an 8-chapter piece of adolescent fiction. It's a time travel story. And the most exciting thing about it for me is that my grandchild, who is a 5th grader, is illustrating it. So they have
Oh,
they have an
wonderful.
illustration in every edition, of the story. It's one of their
Where can
their
we see this?
illustrations, which is really cool. It's the Journal Opinion. It's our local weekly.
Do they have a web edition that we could check out?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah,
Cool.
that would be cool.
Yeah, that would be
June.
cool.
jonews.com is their website.
Can that time machine take us back to the 70s when premium low rates were really
Well,
low?
actually, Mark, now that you mention it, the
Two, Mark.
story is set in 1974 and 1798.
Whoa!
So,
Nice.
so it is set in the 70s, yeah.
Well,
But most of the story takes place in 1798.
Nice.
Very
Very
cool.
cool.
Very nice.
Congrats.
As long as you're not
Oh.
into guillotine, you're all set.
All right.
All right.
Thanks,
Thanks, everybody.
Take
Thank
care,
you.
everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.